Yo, what is up, my friends? Welcome to another episode of Dostcast. My name is Vinamre. If you're new to our YouTube channel, please subscribe because we release new episodes every Tuesday and Friday at 12 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Today's guest is investigative journalist Josy Joseph from this book, The Silent Coup, A History of India's Deep State. This conversation is going to blow your mind. It contains stories that and only an investigative journalist can talk about honestly. Or one of them involves a rocket launcher, the other involves interviewing a member of the Indian Mujahideen. Hizbul Mujahideen, and Josy's life has been incredible. He's covered a bunch of interesting stories that have shook the nation to its core. I'm going to read out the official blurb. Josy Joseph is a writer journalist based in New Delhi and the founder of Confluence Media, platform agnostic investigative journalism outfit. His first book, A Feast of Vultures, The Hidden Business of Democracy in India, won the 2017 Crossword Award for the best non-fiction book. He has won several awards for his journalism, including the Prem Bhatia Trust's India's Best Political Reporter in 2010 and the Journalist of the Year Ramnath Goenka Award in 2013. The Prem Bhatia Trust citation has said the award was for his scoops and revelations, which include a list of scams that have become familiar names in the political lexicon. मैं scams के नाम पढ़ के सुनाता हूँ. These include the Mumbai Adarsh housing scam, the 2010 CWG scam, and his stories have played a significant role in impacting the country's social and political narrative. Then there's other stuff that is obviously a bunch of his accolades and achievements. I'm not going to go into that. This episode is going to change your mind about what you think about courage, speaking your mind in a country where you feel like your free speech is suppressed. Josy is a rare individual who still does investigative journalism and is unafraid to do journalism in a way that it should be done. The episode with Josy Joseph begins in 3, 2, 1.
I don't think after emergency we have seen this level of media censorship, both imposed by the politicians in power, the political party in power, and self-censorship by the owners, and censorship by reporters and journalists. Because of their own. Because so the reporter who gets up in the morning is going into the mainstream newsroom saying that, oh, I should find the safest story for the day. His boss is saying that I'm going to edit the safest story for the day. The owner is hoping that, and is telling the editor only safe stories for the day. So all of this, the safety nets that all of them creates at various levels has created a mainstream media which looks like a large grand tamasha and an embarrassment before the world, because you can't call this a mainstream media of a democracy. This looks like mainstream media of North Korea, Iran maybe, maybe Russia, China, right? We are not, this is definitely not what democracies do or media and democracies do, number one. The second thing is that largely thanks to social media and more so to Mr. Modi, we have a generation of young reporters and editors, young journalists growing up thinking that praising and defending those in power is journalism. So we are actually looking at a generation of timid, embarrassingly timid youngsters doing journalism. There are exceptions, no doubt about it. The third thing is that this entire effect on free speech is not limited to journalism alone. Some of our greatest filmmakers are unable to do their most ambitious projects because of the fear of, because of the censorships that is being imposed on them. In Mumbai, rumors of RSS agents walking around and watching what movies being returned is a reality. I mean, it's something that every filmmaker will tell you.
Oh, they're actually supervising scripts?
Scripts, yeah, and ending up doing very embarrassingly bad movies. The fact is that there are two things that you see primarily with authoritarian rulers and right-wing. When I say right-wing, usually it can be religious right-wing in context of countries like India, or right-wing kind of Trump right-wing kind of thing in America. Right-wing lacks sense of humor. That's also because it's, sense of humor is...
But one could also argue that the left lacks sense of humor as well, because people they cancel anyone they don't like.
Yeah, so the left is a separate discussion. Yeah. I'm talking about the present. Left because of their lack of humor, their sense of entitlement, their sense of their dismissal towards everyone else, and their effort at structuring every narrative by their sense of class and all that. They've screwed themselves over. They become fossils. So their story is over. So they'll have to go. In a country like India, where you have this huge Dalit tribal minority population and such serious environmental issues, our left parties are nowhere in the game, right? It's a perfect fertile ground for a left political system. So that's a separate conversation. I'm talking about the ones in power today and I think that's very important to talk about those in power. As journalists, as intellectuals, our job is to hold those in power accountable. And I think we have been doing it very well. I mean, at least I personally believe that I have done it well extremely over the years. Whoever is a government, I have always been very adversarial in my journalism. So it's not just about Modi. I'm talking when UPA was in power, as you know, I did stories that have had significant impact. I want to believe so. And one lot of got some awards and all that. So I'm saying the right wing generally lacks sense of humor, like the left lacks sense of humor. And I think it's an ideological issue. Anybody who is blinded by an ideology lacks humor, because to laugh the heart out, you need to learn to first laugh at yourself. Right. And these ideologies don't allow, because the moment you start laughing at your ideology, you will realize that your ideology is very stupid.
It also attacks your self-importance.
Yeah, it is so self-importance. So that's the second part. No authoritarian has ever had sense of humor in history, right? So all of it is coming together, and it is depriving our filmmakers from doing their best work. As you know, Midnight Children was about to be, I think, directed by Vishalji. I think I don't know whether the project just disappeared. I thought Maximum City was to be made into movie Bandra Kashyap. I don't know what happened. I've heard about n number of films being shelved because those films tackle some political issue, something sensitive. The funniest thing that I heard was a friend of mine telling me about a movie they were doing for a platform where somebody's reading a book, and the book happened to have some Hindutva cover or something, and they had to change that using VFX, graphics. So it's embarrassingly sad. So I'm saying that the attack on freedom of speech is not limited to just media. We are being pushed into becoming a timid, dreamless society who don't have the courage to dream ambitiously. We are all sitting here. I'm writing books, or you went to do your studies in Boston. The hundreds of thousands of Indians have gone over the world and emerged leaders, or have created a world's largest democracy. All of it happened because we and our ancestors, they had the courage to dream without any fear. And when fear descends, the first thing that does is to kill your imagination. And that is what is happening. We have a generation of youngsters who are growing up in our colleges and schools who are having timid dreams, and who are being told by their parents to be regressive, and who are being told to be careful and to be watchful about extremely liberal teachers and professors. So the freedom of expression that we are discussing, or the freedom of speech, whatever we're framing it as, the fact is that a country that has made tremendous contribution, that is the world's greatest socio-political experiment in 70,000 years since the human beings left, Homo sapiens left Africa. I think that experiment is experiencing an attack of timidity, an attack on its imagination. Is bringing up a generation of children with small dreams and little ambitions.
Wow. I never thought of it like that. So how do you think the establishments manifest this fear in us? Is it small incremental yeses till you realize that your neck is around a noose? Is there like a deliberate effort that is done daily by establishments and security people to do because it's an important point about being courageous, right? Like, I think if I were to generalize, the best you can do is to become an entrepreneur and still hopefully do something that allows you to get government funding. And what I'm trying to think is, what do you say when you mean courageous? Because is it the courage to speak the truth about what you think is wrong in the country? Is it the courage to live a big life?
All of it. Courage is individual, right? Your sense of courage is to maybe build a large global podcast studio. My sense of courage may be to write more books. My sense of courage may be to do more investigative journalism. My sense of courage could be to hold the corporates accountable. His sense of courage may be to design a great movie. So courage is different, right? But if you mentioned entrepreneurs, walk into Bangalore, and if people trust you, talk to them, and they will start whispering to you the fear that they are facing. The fear is not, when you unleash fear systematically into a society, using your taxmen, enforcement directorate, CBI, the police, and even mobs. The fear doesn't get limited to my house saying that, oh, this is house number so and so, here lives a journalist, the fear is located here. No. The next house where the chap is start beginning to do a startup, he also start to fear. Because he looks at it and say, wow man, I am not going to demand a better road, because if I demand a better road to my go down, what happened in that house number could happen to me, right? And the next fellow is saying that, listen, I know that my data that is coming into this innovative app is being stolen by the big telecom companies, which are owned by the cronies who are close to the government. But I won't speak up, man, because if I speak up, so it's that old classic World War II saying, no, first they came for the Jews, I didn't speak up because I was not a Jew. So fear is like that. Fear doesn't have boundaries. Fear spreads. Fear spreads everywhere. And that is when our children become timid. So it is, and how do you manifest, how do you spread fear in a society? It's a systematic, everyday operation of, if you look at, for example, the agency like Enforcement Directorate, it's almost running, if you look at from above, a few thousand of its members are running around like headless chickens. No, but they are not. It's a very organized, orchestrated effort at intimidating identified people into silence, or to jail them, or to get them to give up their businesses to the favorites of those in power. If you look at income tax, man, do you know the amount of cases piled up in all these departments without charge sheets being readied? Because they can't even complete the charge sheets. They don't have people. They are just raiding every day. They are not completing the job that they're supposed to do by their act. So spreading fear that's what my core of my book, the Silent Coup, is that there are about 4 million people in these forces who are now available and are actively out on the street spreading fear. And that fear is not just limited to journalists. It's also meant for you. You might go back and want to chop off some of my statements. You might say that.
No, we won't.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm just saying that. So next time you'll say, listen, should I call him or not? So look at the way they go about doing things. For example, let's say there is a journalist who is very sympathetic towards tribals and all that. Just call him an Naxalite, no? I mean, in the parliament, you have parliament answers which says India do not have urban Naxals. There is no count of them. But prime ministers keep talking about urban Naxals. You look at Bhima Koregaon case, you got on computers, evidence has been planted by somebody. Why isn't is the government with the criminals or with democracy? I'm not talking about, I'm not supporting X or Y. I'm saying that we are in a situation where our democracy's biggest threat are our political parties. They are bigger black money operations than narcos. Narcos बच्चे हैं उनके सामने, बच्चे हैं, ठीक है? Our democratic institutions largely are a threat to democracy again, including mainstream media, right? So if we disband all of them, put all of them into chartered aircraft and send them to Switzerland, I think this country will be a very happy, peaceful place.
But would that not just prevent complete functioning of anything?
What is functioning in this country rather than these raids? What is functioning in this country? You tell me. The economy has gone down. Jobs are disappearing. 37 lakh youth come out in Uttar Pradesh to write Class C clerical exam. That's almost 100% of the educated youth of UP. That's a desperation. There are doctors, engineers, all of them in that group. Clerical exam? That's the power of timidity does. That is the power of when you don't manage your economy. That's what happens to us.
So, Josy, how is it that you've written this book, you've done the piece on the Commonwealth Games, and you also showed how ministers would use to, get more reimbursements than they actually deserved. How is it that you are still a free man? And I'm asking that in the most respectful way possible.
I mean, except for maybe some rare traffic violations, I haven't committed any violence. I mean, I have not violated any laws in this country. I think I'm trying to be as good a democratic citizen of this country as possible, and the highest calling of a citizen is to serve the motherland, to serve the democracy's cause. That's what I'm trying to do. So why shouldn't I be a free man?
The reason I ask is because now in hindsight, my question sounds strange to me because this is the kind of environment that I've grown up in. I wouldn't ask you this, say, in the 1990s or the 1980s.
So I know what you meant. I mean, I'm just saying that. Yeah, I mean, it's not that concerns about security and well-being are not there, but I have no choice. I'm no choice because this is the only job I know. To look at, to investigate complex stories, to write about them. Second, while we spoke about a lot of younger journalists and others, there are a lot of good young people who look up to you. You have to mentor them, help them, guide them, and it's a responsibility. And my own daughter is in college; she wants to talk to me about politics. We discuss. And the third thing is that I think all human beings at whatever level, whether it is a mother bringing up a child, or a journalist or a politician. I'm talking about the good ones, not the evil ones. They are all trying, even the evil ones, we are all trying to create our own legacies. So I don't know what better legacy that I can create than being a good journalist who has set some examples and inspired a group of younger people to do good journalism. So that is what is forcing me to move forward. What keeps me a free man? I don't know. Maybe I'm not as good as I think or you think, and I'm probably not a direct threat to the government of the day. And obviously, the government has a lot of people to deal with because there are all these websites who are doing anti-establishment stories. There are all kinds of columnists. There are all kinds of think tanks, opposition parties. So I think I may not be figuring in their priority list.
Well, that's a good thing for us. But I wanted to ask you, so I've never spoken and sat down with someone who does investigative journalism. How is that, say, different from writing an opinion piece? Are you spending 4 to 6 months on a story? Do you have leads that you sit down and interview with in dingy cafes to get information, and then you go home and there's a big chart paper with all the post-it notes? I'm trying to understand how you arrive at a story. And
no, so okay. I mean, investigative journalism in societies like ours is a lot to do with your reputation, which you build up over a period of time. So one of the things that very helpful to me at this age is that people come to me with sensitive information, very important information, right? So that is one part of it. The second is that investigative journalism is very close to academic research. You know how you put footnotes?
Right, footnotes, bibliographies,
right.
All that. So
every line that I write, I need to have a footnote. I need to know what I'm saying. In Europe, in New York, they say, "Say who?" I had to answer that. So it's a very rigorous academic research work. It's just that what you're dealing with is often very sensational information. Often it has got huge financial, political repercussions for people, and often it can end up endangering your life or the reporter's life, and this around the world. I don't have a big board in my house, but my laptop and my notebooks are all full of drawings and paintings and notes and all that. That's standard. And I also love to hoard documents. So I keep collecting documents, and I trust documents more than human beings mostly. But human beings have to be there to tip you off. And then these days, what I'm seeing in the last 4 years, that a lot of what I'm doing is also involving a lot of technology, because we are handling huge amount of documents, right? I'm talking about global investigations and some of which I'm part of. And then technology also help us solve a lot of things, satellite imageries to tracking of ships to aircraft to all that. So without violating laws, there are a lot of technology that can be deployed in doing complex investigations. So all of it come together. And some of the stories might take months. Some stories, like when I wrote my first book, A Feast of Vultures, if you remember, there are 3 chapters about an aviation fight, and I talk about Jet Airways, which slapped me with a 2,000 crore defamation case. But that company and its promoter, I tracked them for over 12 years, kept collecting little document after document after document. Similarly, when I was writing this book, the Wahid story alone must have taken me about 2 years to put together, though he had done detailed court filings. And there are other stories in the book. So it's time consuming, it's expensive, and it is very unpopular. So for all these 3 reasons, Indian mainstream media do not like and encourage investigative journalism, because their biggest revenue comes from advertisements. And as you know, Government of India and its agencies are the biggest advertisers. And you know who the second, third, fourth, fifth are. So investigative journalism is not good for the health of mainstream media. Right. So people like me spend years there, occasionally being allowed to do stories, most often being used as trophies, and regularly being benched, saying that better sit down,
When you say regularly uses trophies, like, do they say he's the good one among us, like that?
It's a show off, If I get an award, suddenly you put a new article about it, and all that, right? It's nice, to say that, oh, you know what, that's I brought on the chief minister of so-and-so state, So it's a combination of all of it. It's not that they hate you, they like you to the extent that some of your stories can be very helpful in branding and whatever. And sometimes it is for glorified blackmail, which I do not want to get into in detail about any specifics. But you can imagine if, let's say, for example, you find a big information about a corporate, which is a regular advertiser, and the promoter can...
Right, it's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, conflict of interest, and you just show it and get your... So, I mean, like, once I was... my team had found something about a builder, and we were about to go in publishing. I mean, we were in the final stage of writing the copy, and I got a call from one of the promoters, and he said, "Oh, you're doing something like this?" I said, "Yeah, we have just sent the questionnaire to the builder and others." He said, "Just wait for a day, because they I think they're sending some reply." I thought, they must have called him and courtesy sake. I said, "Sure." But next day, I saw a jacket ad, cover ad from that builder in the newspaper, and that was the end of the story. So, we have the good investigative reporter has his utilities, but he's not always comfortable for the mainstream Indian media. He's a troublemaker. So that is why you will find most of us are outside of mainstream media. I also left my job 4 years ago with the Hindu because I realized that I was wasting away the prime of my life trying to adjust myself into a large conspiracy of mediocrity.
Wow. And so is it harder to operate independently?
Of course. I find it financially I struggle. It has had implications in my family life, meaning in the sense of in the comforts I enjoy or all that. And it's challenging. Obviously, there is no guarantee of salary. I've had housing loan, checks will bounce, this, that. But I'm a happy man. I don't need to go into an office and talk to an editor or a colleague who has got up in the morning with self-censorship. I don't need to. And I don't need to get up in the morning self-censoring myself. I don't need to go and write a 300-word copy which makes me depressed. So the lack of corporate salary at the end of the month it may be a challenge, but the rest of the 30 days, I am a very happy man. So I think I would rather be that happy man for 30 days than feeling good about one day getting several lakh rupees in my bank.
Wow, I don't know what to say. So, when you were writing this book, I'm assuming when you write other stories as well, Do you take the help of the security establishments that you often bash? Because sometimes you need to get, say, police records, or like you want to cover a story that requires certain permissions. At that point, do you take help from the police?
See, sorry if I gave you the impression that our police and intelligence are all full of only bad people.
No,
No,
no, no, no. I know that. Yeah.
there are a lot of good people. I got a lot of friends in these agencies, and they're whatever you call it, sources, whatever you want to call it. But there are a lot of people who really trust me, and they actually these books are these books and our good investigative journalism are largely products of the courage shown by some anonymous whistleblower within the system. And that is the part that we don't celebrate enough. In this country, we have no sense of respect in whistleblowers. And because of which whistleblowers go drift their own and becomes mad. But I'm saying, so a lot of what we do is an outcome of people, bureaucrats, officials, police officers, intelligence officers, etc., showing the courage to put their job and life at risk to get information out to the public so that public knows, so that this democracy is stronger. So my book is, if you read, you'll realize that my book is full of good people who are anonymous and telling me, look at that way, look at this. You know what? You presume this, that's wrong. Look at that document, go to that court. Here is a file. So that's
In India, do we have any laws that protect whistleblowers?
So we do have in the Central Vigilance Commission has a whistleblower protection program, or there is a office order, I remember, but we don't have any such sound legal frameworks in place. We don't provide any rewards to whistleblowers. We don't provide any identity cover and protection for a lifetime, etc. Whereas if you look at the US, most of Western Europe and many countries, there are very robust whistleblower programs with huge rewards attached to it. So even for the risks that you take, they compensate you for lifetime of financial security and protection. And we need to have it. That's what democracies should do. And because we don't have it, we have all kinds of rascals building companies with money from God knows for who, political parties that are getting donations from anonymous sources, all that. So we don't have any systems in place.
You've traveled all across the country, clearly, as is mentioned in the book alone. And one of the chapters, has you waking up in Srinagar in Kashmir, and you stay in different places. I'm just wondering, you also interviewed someone from, I forget the name of the outfit, but it has Mujahideen in it. Hizbul Mujahideen, right? To land an interview with someone like that, what does it take?
Oh, that was, you're talking about my interview with Abdul Majid Dar, who was the Commander-in-Chief of Hizbul Mujahideen, Kashmir's biggest militant group. This was 2001, peak of militants in Kashmir. And the historic peace accord between New Delhi and Hizbul Mujahideen had collapsed a few months earlier. I think I was young and foolish like most young people. So I just went around Kashmir talking to people who I thought who knew Abdul Majid Dar, and told them that, look, I would like to interview him, without realizing the fact that potentially Majid Dar is sitting angry and upset because the peace accord that he was trying to build, the peace ceasefire had collapsed. He was now not, he was caught in a no man's land situation. He's a commander-in-chief of the largest militant group. And there is Lashkar-e-Toiba, which was angry with him, and there is a lot of internal clashes happening between them. I'm walking into that minefield and telling people that I would like to meet Majid Dar. And when I get the phone call to come, I have no option but to go. In Kashmir, you can't say no to people because you know how it is. I went and I ended up with the interview and came back. So it is nothing heroic or anything courageous. I remember that in the morning of that day, I sent an email to my editor in Bombay saying that I'm going to interview Majid Dar. And I believe I am going to interview Majid Dar. If I don't call him at 12 o'clock, please call up the police and army and alert them I could have been kidnapped, right? Now, a few months after I did this, another journalist in Karachi tried to do the same. Daniel Pearl from Wall Street Journal. He got killed. So, I think a lot of great reporting is actually act of foolishness.
I can't believe you just said that so casually. Someone did the same thing as you and got killed. How how were you lucky enough? Especially because, one, you're not from the region. Second, this was done primarily in Hindi or English?
He spoke mostly in Urdu mixed Hindi.
Okay. So were you escorted there in a...
So no, I was asked to be present at a particular location at 7:30 or 6:30 in the morning, 7:30, and 7:30 in Kashmir is very early. Nobody is there, so somebody comes and picks me up in an old scooter, and he doesn't allow me to carry my camera, etc. And he drives around a part of Srinagar, keeps going round and round to ensure that we are not being tailed by anybody, that I am sufficiently confused. And then he takes me to a house in a normal middle class colony. And in that house, when I enter, there are 3 people who are tending to the gardens. One is watering, one is cutting some flowers, one is, But I still remember that moment when I saw the first sunrise. I was walking into the gate, and it's the first sunrise hit them. They were all wearing Farhan, and I could suddenly see the AK-47. The
silhouette of it.
Silhouette of it. Yeah, I mean, it's just I could see that, and that froze me for a moment. Then I said, no, I have no option but to go inside. Right? I can't run now. So, yeah, I mean, that's how it happened. So it's not.
And you wrote this interview down? Like you...
No, I recorded. I was allowed to have a dictaphone. I used to have those days, the old dictaphones.
Yeah.
So I had several cassettes and kept recording him. And it went on for it. I couldn't call the editor by 12 because the interview kept going on and on, because it became like a Navarasa class, because sometimes he would laugh, sometimes he'll cry, sometimes he'll get angry with me, But he spoke. I mean, I remember asking him about what is your favorite attack, and he explained it to me. And today, when I recall, I think that how stupid, You ask a militant who has been killing people, what's your favorite attack? He said, I'll just show you what is my favorite attack and slash you know what I'm saying? So...
Were you not afraid for your life at any point during this whole interview?
I don't know. I mean, see, I'll tell you what. One of the things that good reporting needs is a very low sense of self-importance. If you have too much of sense of self-importance, you won't do great stories or good stories, right? Because then you're thinking about yourself. So I think maybe that is who I am. I don't know. I'm just saying that if you ask me today, I don't recall being afraid. But yes, I remember there are moments of chilling moments when like I walk into the gate and I see these chaps, AK-47, jetting out of the Farhan or... But I think, I don't know. I mean, maybe one of the problems with journalism, because journalism is a very mediocre career, as you know, because you're not being a neurosurgeon or a heart specialist, saving people's lives in that sense. So people who can't, in fact, one of the jokes in our newsrooms used to be those who fail UPSC end up being journalists. Luckily, I have never sat for UPSC, but the fact is that it's a mediocre profession. And because it's a mediocre profession, a lot of people, when they get some recognition, little glory, then they start beating their own glory to the world, and then they forget about the next story. So I think the really smart reporters are those who don't talk too much about their own stories or their own security, and who don't think too much about themselves, who are focused on the next story and thinking that, okay, next story might be bigger than the last one. And that is something that maybe I have it. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that. So I haven't thought too much about it. But yeah, I mean, actually 2-3 days before that interview, I remember I was walking on Zero Bridge and I heard a sound and I just fell down. And when I looked up, I saw a hotel going up in flames. It was a rocket launcher that just flew over me. And then I got up and I realized that there was nobody on the bridge. I was a fool who was just walking all alone, because people knew something was happening there, right? So Kashmir those days was like that, so you don't...
And have you had any other crazy encounters like this?
Oh, no, sorry. I mean, I was not intending to talk so much about the encounter because I don't like to. But since you asked me, yeah, I mean, see, when you are trying to find the truth in a very immoral society, almost an amoral society, you're probing very powerful people. You end up causing damage of hundreds of thousands of crores to companies. You pull people out of power. You end up putting people in jail, your investigation. So there is behind every sanitized copy that you read in my book or whatever I've done, and there are each one has its own set of crazy stories. But as I said earlier, I personally don't like to talk too much about it because I'm focused on the next story. Because there is so much to talk about if you start talking that you'll forget about the next story and your responsibility towards the society and democracy.
You might also. Do you think that is the adage of investigative journalists who are told? Have you seen House of Cards, by the way? Huh.
Of course, yeah.
You've seen House of Cards, right? So you've seen how Frank Underwood is, he's responsible for the young reporter's killing, but then Tom Hammersmith and her former boyfriend drive themselves almost crazy trying to prove the truth. But whenever they try to prove the truth, someone from the establishment comes and does things in a certain way. So what I'm trying to say is the focus on the next story also like a sanity act? Because otherwise, do you feel like there are people, maybe colleagues, who can go crazy when they know that the truth is there, but no one is believing them?
Yeah, I mean, all of us and most of us actually do suffer from fallouts of doing this work, and a lot of us don't talk about it. In fact, I think mental illness, anxiety, depression, etc., is very common among people who do it. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that when you talk about House of Cards, Americans are very good in glamorizing even their little acts of courage, right? So
They invented LinkedIn.
so we don't do. But when you really look at it, I think what we do is far more complex and far more life-threatening and dangerous. When I say we, meaning what's happening in India, in illiberal democracies like India, like in Sri Lanka. Like other day in Sri Lanka, some reporter was saying that there was some security training, and they're talking about how do you shake off your tail on the street and all that. He said, "Sir, in our country, nobody tails us. They'll just come in a white van, pick us up, and that's the end of the story." So it's more dangerous. You're talking about them. I think every reporter develops their own ways of dealing with the pressures of doing what you're doing. I don't go to press club much, or I don't go for parties or all that. So I just try to be home, meaning get home during daytime or early evening. Don't drive out late night. Don't ever drink and drive. Normal life, yeah, as boring middle class life as possible. So people have their own ways of dealing with it, right. But all of it, I don't mean to say that this is any great job. All of us, every doctor who is every day saving lives, or every policeman standing at a traffic junction and breathing all the foul air, we are all doing things which are risking our lives. So I keep telling people that in Delhi, every day on an average about 5 people used to be killed in road accidents. I don't know the latest numbers, at least 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't think 5 journalists get killed in Delhi on an average in a year, right? Yes, journalists get killed in our remote areas and district official towns, and so they have much more dangerous life than people like me. We are all part of a very privileged lot.
So when you were writing this book, and now, did you think of a sequel? Did you think about what is the logical conclusion to the deep problems in our system? And we obviously haven't done one thing, which is to contextualize what a deep state is, right? Because it means completely different things for conspiracy theorists and completely different things from the angle that you come in from.
Yeah, we'll talk about deep state for a moment. I'm just going to deliberately use the word because I think that deep state as a sinister usage to me in Indian context, I said, has to be applied to these agencies and these people who are beyond accountability. Whereas, as you know, deep state in the Western academic notion is slightly different. It is a group of people who have a shared interest in the survival of the state, and but there is nobody like that in India or countries like that. So that's the academic part of deep state definition. I don't have solutions to everything, but there are a lot of solutions available in the world. If you look at all mature democracies, we can see how they hold their intelligence agencies accountable.
Like how? How do they do that?
I think ultimately Parliament is supreme. And I think a parliamentary oversight on agencies is very critical. Like the way, so in India, there is one institution which has largely survived the ongoing troubles is Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Okay. Why? Because CAG, while it's administratively finance ministry, I think finance provides money or whatever, it is operational, not operational. It's output, and it's, I think, in operationally they are accountable to the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament, which is chaired by the opposition, one of the opposition MPs, and has members from all sides of the spectrum. We need to have such parliamentary mechanisms in place for all these agencies. Without that kind of ongoing audit, these agencies will remain threat to us, and they might end up scuttling our democracy. So, simply put, I think ultimately we will have to have the belief in democracy. Note that our first past the post system is a great way of electing people. It has its own problems. We need to improve that. But accountability to parliamentary system is the simplest solution, if you ask me, for a lot of these problems. On police reforms, we have had Supreme Court judgments very detailed about how to reform police, how to depoliticize. Just implement it. We just need to get onto the streets and demand. I think the politicians have gone deaf in this country across the spectrum. They are all, as I said, they are all in pursuit of power, and political parties are becoming such huge threat to our democracy that I don't think they are going to listen to us. They'll keep playing the cards. They'll keep coming to you, creating imaginary enemies, creating narratives that will lull us into beliefs and dreams. And they're masters in it. They're full time. Distract you. That's their job. But I said, the ordinary people, we need to get out on the street and demand these things. Accountability, accountability, and accountability. And there is nobody above the democratic institutions. If anybody ever tells, and I know that some of the people in power today and yesterday, they all believed that that individual liberty doesn't matter. For the larger good of the society, individuals can be sacrificed. No, I don't think so. I think we need to say that no, we want a liberal democracy. What is it that last thing that we want? And forget everything. What is the one thing that you demand? My child should have the freedom to dream wildly, right? To dream of, my daughter used to dream of making flying houses when she was a kid. All the time she would tell me about flying houses. And I doubt how many children would be dreaming of flying houses today, because somebody must have told them by this time, no, Modi ji won't like it. So who knows? I mean, who knows? I'm just saying that I see parents. I see parents in parks and elsewhere talking. I overhear many a time. Their own sense of their freedom and democracy is altered, and which is going to be very bad for their children.
Remember that show called Gustaki Maaf that used to come on TV, where they would make the puppets of different politicians? NDTV, I think NDTV. It was in Hindi, and they would make puppets of different politicians, and whatever happened that week, whatever little things that they said or some policy they were involved in, they would mime that and use satire. And if it was Lalu Prasad Yadav, then they would have a puppet of Lalu Prasad Yadav, and he would be speaking with Mayawati, something like that. That could air on national television, and people could watch satire. Which is why I kept coming back to satire. It's like it's becoming really hard to speak your mind again and again, because if it's not the establishment, it's the troll armies on Twitter and elsewhere that get to you, who I think are deliberately placed to suppress any kind of humorous jibe, not even like a vicious jibe, a humorous jibe at the state of the country. And if you speak to comedians, I have spoken to many comedians in India, popular ones, you can imagine an invisible circle that they have to circumambulate, and that's why they can do comedy on very tame topics.
So, I think social media, we have to look at it in a very historic context. That's the first time when publishing went out of the control of the elite, educated or the moneyed elite of the world. Historically, press has always been one of the strengths of elites. And social media, if you take that social media revolution that has happened before, as we speak and continues to, if you take that day, social media started as day zero, what we saw was also the beginning of the losers' revolt. The losers of... we have people in the last couple of centuries, we have overplayed merit. We have over-celebrated merit. Like you and me must have been writing entrance exam from... I wrote my first entrance when I was 10 years old. First exam. Competitive exam. And then I've been writing and writing and writing. Like we are all writing entrance or competitive exams. So we have been overplaying the merit of this game without realizing the fact, acknowledging the fact that this meritocracy's losers are much more in population than the winners. And that winners were almost behaving like a secret clique which was running the country, running newspapers, writing books, everything.
There's no word that that represents the opposite of a topper. No, not exactly. No, not that. Topper, failure, and the middle.
Said there is nothing. There is no middle. There is no average there, right? There is no ordinary. I think the social media just platformed them, and I think of all the politicians in the country, the man who really identified that revolution is Narendra Modi. He adopted the social media like fish to water. And what he did was he started following select people. If you look at the first 1,000 people he followed, you'll see a pattern, very overbearing pattern that he's following a certain kind of right-wingers. Not all right-wingers, right? I don't want to go into that. That's a discussion in itself. But he, in many ways, also was the first man who created the troll army in this country. But then, as his popularity rose and the elections came, everybody started creating the troll armies. The Congress, the AAP, the BJP, everybody. Now this troll army has one job, which is to sit and do their master's whatever job. But they are also people, human beings who are itching their fingers to type something, right? So all of it together, what has happened is that these troll armies are also, again, if you look at the members, their members are, the what I said, the losers. I mean, it may not be the most academically appropriate and culturally most appropriate word to use, but it is a losers crowd, which is this troll army. So they then target Josy Joseph and say, man, how does he write book? We both went to the same village school. We were on the same bench. He, just because he passed an exam in 10th, at the age of 10, he went to senior school. I didn't write for it because my father didn't know, not because I was not intelligent. So he has his own logic to it. Why he became a loser or whatever. Or why Josy became a writer. No, he goes after him. And when I say that it's not personal, it's more social. And this fight is here to stay. And that is where, when a prime minister of the country says hard work is better than Harvard, it captures to me a lot of what is going on. And the troll army that you call, the losers, they identify with it. Because he also didn't go to Harvard, right? Harvard is symbolic of the elite global education institutions. He didn't go there. When you went to BU in Boston, how many of the classmates from your school were left behind, right? Most of them. Maybe financial, I'm not talking about the other cultural, social, religious factors which prevented them from going. I'm talking just purely in terms of this framework. So, I think in many ways, Modi was an early evangelist of it. And he summed up what's happening in that very beautiful line, which said, hard work is better than Harvard, which appeals to many people. But Modi won't be the last. Why? Because people have woken up, from Trump to Erdogan to all across the world. The strongman politicians have all woken up to the reality that out there is a huge army of people who have a lot of time and who are hungry to give an opinion. Because nobody ever listened to them. Nobody ever wanted their opinion. But suddenly, if they keep giving opinions every day at least 10 times, there is a potential that one day in 6 months that one opinion will break out and he become an influencer. And if you look at many of our so-called influencers on Twitter especially, at least where I log in occasionally to see what's happening to my book or if there is any abuse coming my way, I don't say anything. But if you see there, many of the people who are influential and noticeable and famous are famous for being giving some Twitter quotes or one day one quote became famous.
Right. And there's often that pinned tweet that became famous. So you can see the chronology of their fame.
So this, I think, but there is a flip side to it. The flip side is, which is what I've been arguing, that these social media platforms, while they have helped democratize a lot of things, and obviously Me Too and other movements have benefited out of it. The Middle East, which you studied, the revolutions there have been.
The Arab Spring sprung out of Facebook. Yeah.
But the fact is also that the same Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are all responsible for the death of dozens of people, if not hundreds, in the Rohingya crisis, in Sri Lanka among Muslims, in India, the WhatsApp rumors, etc. So I think the social media platforms, especially those came out of America, are the biggest failure of American democracy's regulatory mechanisms. Because America will never allow a medicine to be sent into the market without proper testing. But they allowed this entire generation of technology to be unleashed to the world without looking at the pros and cons of it. And having benefited, now they are talking about controlling and regulating it and all that. But I think there is all the reason for these platforms to be held accountable for manslaughter, for attack on democracy, for limiting our freedom of expression and human rights, and for enabling a lot of other regressive values. And they need to be held accountable in the American courts and maybe around the world. I think that course correction is required. Otherwise, we are seeing these tools becoming enabling anti-democratic forces, regressive forces, and our women won't be any more safe on this, which they are not on their platforms, and being used for other dirty tricks.
One could also argue at the same time, while all of these things exist, these platforms also provide the free market to blossom, people to make careers from, and a lot of good to happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that there is the good side to it, which is that one, if you look at people like you, Vinamre, I don't think someone like you with your politics and attitude would be very easily accepted in a mainstream media house, right?
I wouldn't want to.
You don't want. No, you are able to say that also because you know that you have a place you can make yourself.
Right. It's allowed me that possibility now. I wouldn't be able to. For example, like the generation that you come from, you still had to walk through the.
Yeah. No, when I wrote my first book, it was published by HarperCollins. I had a case, 2,000 crore rupee defamation case. Now HarperCollins is owned by Rupert Murdoch. And I think it is listed, or its parent company is listed in New York. So their lawyers went into frenzy because the total compensation sought for defamation was more than the market cap of HarperCollins globally. So you know they had to declare it there that the company faces potential financial insolvency, right? So what I've done is I have financially indemnified HarperCollins and in turn Rupert Murdoch's family from many financial implications coming out of this case. So the lawyer asked me, why are you laughing? I said, look, I don't have 2,000 crores, so I can laugh, right? And what I'm saying is, so my generation was dependent on these global big media giants, monopoly players, etc., which your generation is now completely, and it's heartening to see so many individual brands coming out, emerging stars. Probably you have more viewership than an average television news channel in this country.
Not yet.
No, I'm saying that, probably, who knows?
But like the best example probably is like Joe Rogan in America, who has more views per episode in the millions than say CNN or Fox for that matter.
Yeah. So it's changing, right? So I'm saying so that is heartening, but there is a negative side.
That's true. Yeah. Well, Josy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on my podcast. And thank you so much for coming to Safdarjung and recording. And people can obviously buy the book, Josy Joseph, The Silent Coup, History of India's Deep State, and other books. Check out your work on Twitter. And what was your organization called? The Confluence? Confluence Media. Any other place where they can follow your work? I'm just trying to think.
No, I'm not much so active in social media or anywhere. But I'm on Twitter, of course. There is a blue tick. I don't know if Elon Musk is taking it away. I'm not going to pay $8. I'm on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram because I don't have time to take photographs and post and do 10 minutes reel outside Fakir Chand, I see people outside Fakir Chand bookstore, and especially Fakir Chand. I think because of the they got doors on both sides.
Oh, right.
So in Khan Market, the people are making reels instead of going inside and looking at a book. So I don't do any of it. I'm quite that way. It's a boring life. But yes, I'm working on my next book, which is about 1947. I'm writing some scripts, involved in developing some shows, some documentaries, and maybe some more podcasts. So all that. So yeah, I mean, you'll find that occasionally some stuff that I'm doing keeps coming out.
And I just want to say you're an anomaly when it comes to the work that you do, and I haven't met anyone like you who can speak the truth so bluntly. And I mean, honestly, you give me hope that maybe journalism isn't as tarnished as people make it out to be today.
Yeah, thank you. One thing that I must mention is that, look, there are a lot of good people in the society. What has happened is that for various reasons, including political and technological, the majority of the people have gone silent. So the loud ones the rascals are loud now. So don't think that our society is gone down or bad. It is just that the majority of our good people are silent and they're sitting depressed, worried about it. So I think we are in a good shape. We will come back from this. We are passing through a very difficult time when a certain kind of politics has benefited from various factors, including huge capitalist funding. We will overcome this because, as I said, ultimately there is no other experiment like India in human history. And there is no other way other than this country to remain a flourishing democracy, because there is no one group that you can wipe out. There is no more partition you can do to this country. There is no way you can create segregated ghettos across the country. You can't standardize our eating habits and clothing habits. So I think we'll come back. We'll be there.
Thank you so much.